Reverend the Honourable Fred Nile.
Mr President, I rise on behalf of the Christian Democratic Party and also on behalf of the Shooters and Fishers Party to speak in support of this significant motion which states that this House acknowledges the traumatic effects of the forced adoption practices of the past that have echoed through the lives of tens of thousands of mothers, fathers, people adopted as children and their families, and two, all members of this House with profound sadness and remorse, so that those living with the ongoing grief and pain of forced adoption practices, that we are sorry. I commend the government for bringing this motion to the attention of the House. The state has a rightful role to play, a leadership role in helping to heal the wounds of past wrongs in forced adoption, as we are doing today. We need to publicly acknowledge the distress, trauma and violation of mother-child relationships as a result of forced, coerced or unethical adoptions. First and foremost, I would like to put on record that I am profoundly saddened and genuinely sorry for the unfathomable pain and suffering to tens of thousands of mothers, fathers and countless children as a result of forced adoptions. Like other members of this House, I shared on the Standing Committee on Social Issues and heard the heartbreaking stories from witnesses appearing before those inquiries in the 1989 and 1998, and I'm pleased that we're able to have those laws modified to allow children to find their parents and parents to find their children. These mothers, fathers and children must have faced an intense amount of fear, trauma, grief and loss which none other could even begin to comprehend. Sometimes what we think is best in the long term can turn out to be horrifically and horribly wrong in the long term. Susan Gare, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Social Work and Community Welfare at James Cook University stated, quote, "From the 1950s, babies of unmarried women were labelled illegitimate, and as such the women were deemed unfit to mother. It was believed these young women could best serve society and themselves if they relinquished their child for adoption. Then they could get on with their lives. Adoption was upheld as the only option for these women because of the lack of financial and other support and the stigma associated with illegitimacy and motherhood out of wedlock. Many of the women were young, vulnerable and experiencing personal crises. They were not informed of any legal rights to keep the child and were made to feel inadequate, immoral and undeserving." That's the end of the quote. Birth mothers were silenced when it came to speaking out about their hidden pregnancies, their treatment during the birth, which was frightening and traumatic, and their grief after losing their child. I cannot begin to articulate how these mothers, fathers and children must have felt. However, I do have an appreciation of displacement from my own sister's baby's forced adoption, who spent many years trying to locate the twins that were taken away from her when she was deserted by her husband, and all those involved believed she could not bring up those children. Thankfully, she was able to find them and to express to them her love for them, and as an explanation of how that situation arose. Through my own experience, saying sorry gives power to those who have been wronged and allows them to be released from the burden of wrongdoing against them. From his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, Stephen Covey states, quote, "Perhaps there is nothing that tests our proactive capacity as much as saying I'm sorry to another person. If your security is based on your image or your position or on being right, to apologise is like draining all the juice from your ego. It wipes you out. It pushes every one of your human gifts to its limit. In the same way, I believe the maturity of a nation is the ability to say sorry. I think it's important to mention ex-Prime Minister Kevin Rudd's apology to the stolen generation, where he said, for the pain, suffering and hurt of those stolen generations, their descendants and their families left behind, we say they're sorry. We have an obligation to apologise, which in turn gives opportunity for forgiveness. As it states in the Bible, therefore, as elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, and forgiving one another. I'd like to finish with this prayer for those who have suffered for the immense emotional, psychological and physical impact of forced adoptions. May God heal your body and your soul. May your pain cease. May your strength increase. May your fears be released. May blessings, love and joy surround you now and forever. Amen.
Both houses of the Parliament of New South Wales, on behalf of the people of New South Wales, have now concluded the apology for forced adoptions. It is the sincere wish of honourable members that the apology be accepted in the spirit in which it has been offered, in a spirit of genuine concern for the suffering of the innocent, acknowledgement of the pain and suffering experienced by mothers, fathers, and children who were affected by practices that were wrong, and, as we are reminded in the findings of the Social Issues Committee, often unlawful and ethical. It is the determination of this Parliament that we will have learned from our past mistakes and will remain vigilant to ensure that they are not repeated. I ask honourable members and officers to stand for a minute's silence in an affirmation of this historic event and an acknowledgement of this apology. I thank honourable members.
Mr President.
The Leader of the House.
Mr President, to suit the convenience of the House, I suggest that you do now leave the chair until the ringing of a long bell at 12 noon.
To suit the convenience of the House, I will now leave the chair until the ringing of a long bell at 12 noon. I invite all those present to make their way to the Strangers' Dining Room for morning tea. Order. While some members may feel that by standing in our places, as we did, we passed the motion, others feel that it is appropriate that we put the motion as well. So it would be appropriate, therefore, I think also that we put the motion, and we will do so. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. To suit the convenience of the House, I will now leave the chair until the ringing of a long bell at 12 noon. I invite all those present to make their way to the Strangers' Dining Room for morning tea.